Good morning. Welcome to Genesis chapter 11. All right, so in the beginning of the chapter here, we're going to see that the whole world is of one language and vocabulary. But chapter 10 had already divided the nations according to its peoples and tongues. It's likely that chapter 11, verses 1 through 9, explains how the arrangement in chapter 10 came about, especially since chapter 10 discusses multiple generations in one brief overview. It's important to keep in mind that the book of Genesis often goes outside the chronological order to arrange the material thematically. So verse 1, now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. They said, come, let us build for ourselves a city, and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise, we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. So the whole motive of the people here is to put themselves in the spotlight. Straight up old-fashioned pride. They want to point the glory to themselves, and in verse 4, we see them taking a direct stance against God's command to spread out and fill up the entire earth, which was stated in Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. And instead, they desired to stay in their own city. So verse 5, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Not quite sure what that looked like, or if it's just an expression for his intimacy with his creation. Verse 6, the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do. And now nothing with which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. These guys had their minds set out on what they wanted to accomplish and were determined to do so. Verse 7, come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. Okay. So here we see God talking in the plural again, like he did in verse 26 of Genesis chapter 1, when he said, let us make man in our image. And in chapter 3, verse 22, where he said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. And because of these prior passages of God referring to us, it continues to display what will be revealed more clearly in Scripture, that God's essence consists of more than one personhood. Later chapters will also clearly point out that there is only one God, and this leads to other texts within the New Testament regarding the Trinity. All right, so verse 8. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. Verse 10, these are the records of the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and became the father of Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived 500 years after he became the father of Arpachshad, and he had other sons and daughters. And as we discussed before, after the flood we really start seeing the ages of man decline. Here you'll see it steadily. Verse 12, Arpachshad lived 35 years and became the father of Shelah. And Arpachshad lived 403 years after he became the father of Shelah and had other sons and daughters. Shelah lived 30 years and became the father of Eber. And Shelah lived 403 years after he became the father of Eber, and he had other sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years and became the father of Peleg. And Eber lived 430 years after he became the father of Peleg, and he had other sons and daughters. Peleg lived 30 years and became the father of Reu. And Peleg lived 209 years after he became the father of Reu, and he had other sons and daughters. Reu lived 32 years and became the father of Serug. And Reu lived 207 years after he became the father of Serug, and he had other sons and daughters. Serug lived 30 years and became the father of Nahor. Verse 23. And Serug lived 200 years after he became the father of Nahor, and he had other sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years and became the father of Terah. And Nahor lived 119 years after he became the father of Terah, and he had other sons and daughters. Terah lived 70 years and became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So here we see that Abram, who will later get the name Abraham from God, falls in the lineage of Noah's son Shem. Verse 27. Now these are the records of the generations of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran became the father of Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan. And they went as far as Haran and settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. All right, please join me for the next chapter as we see what happens with the nation Israel here. Take care.